Hi everybody, my name is Paige. I am one of Jasmine's friends, and I'm here to talk about my experience at the Whispers Estate. So my uncle owns the Whispers Estate. He bought it last year in March. I had been there a few times. He is a teacher and he's also a paranormal investigator. He's very passionate about this field, so I am also interested in that, and I thought it would be cool to take a group of people who were maybe going to approach this with a bit more spirit minded, someone who maybe could look at this situation and say, okay, let's really try to bring out the spirits. Because my thing is, I kind of feel bad for the spirits that are there, because so many people come into that house looking for an experience, and they come in uninvited, they come in and they just kind of use the house as they like. And I wanted to see if maybe approaching it from a different viewpoint would help with the activity in the house, and maybe help the spirits feel a little bit more cared for and a little bit more respected. So I contacted Jasmine about bringing some of her friends and some of my friends and going to the Whispers Estate, just to see if some of our connection to the spirit world and some of our craft experiences could help us bring out the spirits and their essence, and show them that we respect them and we want to learn from them. So that was why I started the trip. So I reached out to Jasmine and Sydney, and both Jasmine and Sydney said that they were in right away, which was awesome. And then we just sort of kind of built the list from there, bringing, of course, I brought my husband, Jordan, and then we brought some other friends on who were experienced with this kind of thing, and some people who had never experienced this and were kind of looking for an experience as kind of an introduction to it. And we came together and we started planning. So I invited everybody over to my house for tacos and for tarot. And we pulled some cards to see, well, first, before that, Jasmine and I met up at Applebee's and talked about this a little bit. And we pulled some cards like, where should we focus our energies? Where should we focus our time? Like, what kind of things should we be doing there? What are we going to encounter there? And it was really interesting because we both pulled similar cards, and a lot of times we pulled the same number, like maybe not the same suit, but like she would pull the 5 of Cups, I'd pull the 5 of Pentacles. It was really interesting. And those cards basically were saying that, like, this is going to be a test for both of us to kind of see where we can push ourselves in spirituality and in our connection to the craft. We all met with the full roster of people, minus 2 people that couldn't make it that night, because it's impossible to get adults to like all come together on one night. And we all just talked about what we were going to do there. We kind of set an agenda. We pulled cards to find out who should do what and who should go where and who should partner with who. And that's really, and it was really kind of a bonding experience too, so that we all kind of could feel how our energies work together and if we all vibe together, because that's important. If you're going to go into a house like this, you don't want to go in there with someone who's just not going to get along with you or is going to be rude to you or something like that. But everybody was cool. And planning really helped, because then we could branch off and like little groups could plan their parts from there. So after that night, Sydney and I met up a couple times to practice the seance, because it is something that you shouldn't go into like, oh, I've never done this before. Like, you should practice it. So if you're somebody who's considering doing like a real seance, working with real dead spirits and entities, you should practice that. So Sydney and I practiced, and the first time we practiced, it was kind of rough because I had no idea what I was doing. And Sydney knew a lot about seances, but she wasn't supposed to be the one running it per the cards. Like, I was supposed to be the one who invoked and evoked and did all the chanting and things like that. So it was really more of like Sydney wanting to help me, but knowing that I kind of had to do my thing. And so that was more of just like a orientation, I guess, to seances. And then the second night she came over, went really well and really smoothly at my house. And we did the seance successfully, and I was able to invoke Sydney's, some spirits that Sydney had some connection with. And that was a really positive experience. And it made me feel a lot more confident about doing the seance at Whispers. After that, we met up at my house and we kind of caravan there because not all of us could fit in one car. And we got there and we did the tour. My uncle was there, gave us a rundown, showed us some of his, equipment. So if you ever go to Whispers, he's happy to show you some of his paranormal investigation equipment. There's some there that you can use, which is kind of neat. And then he left, and then we got all set up for everything, and then we started Three Kings and then the seance. So after we got all set up and we ran through it, we ran through all the chants because, again, if you're chanting a lot, you should probably practice. You don't want to fumble over the words. You want to kind of know what's going on. Even though people were repeating after me, it was still good for them to hear it, so they knew kind of what to expect. They knew, what we were going to be saying, and they were kind of familiar with it. So we did all the practice, and then we went down to do the Three Kings. So the basement is like the scariest part of the house to me personally. My experiences there before were really negative in the basement. Like, my dad got bit in the basement. Like, there are just really negative entities down there, and you could feel that whenever you were down there. So when we were chanting to protect Jasmine and start the Three Kings, I was like getting goosebumps and was just like, I want to get out of here. I was kind of like, let's get this done quickly so we can get out of here. So as soon as we got Jasmine secured and down there and we did the chanting and, she was set up really well, we all went, well, all but one person went up to the seance room in the attic. So in the attic, the previous times I had been there, I had seen like blue lights in the attic, and that's really weird because all the windows are blacked out. Like, when I say blacked out, I mean they're literally painted black, or there's like contact paper over the window, so no light could get in and out, and there's no reason why blue light should be up there. So the attic kind of creeps me out anyway, but it is the seance room, and it definitely is set up well for a seance. Like, it's like a round table with lots of chairs, and the energy in there is just, you can kind of feel that that's a hot spot for the house, I guess you could say. So we sat around, and I was sitting with my back to the wall so that I could kind of see what was happening in the hallway. And the first thing we did was Sydney led us in the Dark Mother's Prayer, and then we cast a circle, because you should always have a circle cast to protect you. And like, when you do that, you need to visualize that there's like a spear around you in your group protecting you from anything that might try to get in and interfere. And in that house, like 100% something's going to try to come in and interfere, because that's what thrives in that house. They like to scare you. They like to freak you out. They like to mess with you. So we did the seance circle, and then we invoked. So when you invoke a spirit, you're chanting to ask someone specifically to come through. And in this case, we asked, I think, 5 or 6 different people that could have come through. We said all their names. The reason that you want to be specific is if you're not specific, then you're definitely going to get people and things that you did not ask for. And chances are, especially in a house like that, you're going to get people and things that you didn't ask for in the first place anyway. So we invoked, and then I asked tarot cards, like, are any of the spirits we called here? And it was a very clear no. So then you have to evoke. So you say the chant backwards to kind of push out whatever came in, if anything came in. And then we invoked again. And I asked the cards again, and the answer was no. So then we evoked. Then we invoked the third time. And really, like, 3 times is the charm. If you can't get someone after 3 times, Jasmine said this, and I agree, it's kind of rude to keep calling if they're not picking up the phone. So we were ready to call it if we didn't get anything this time. But we did. I asked, are any of the spirits present? And I got a 3 of Pentacles, which is most likely yes, which was enough for us to continue. And then we kind of could run through and ask who's here, and we could ask the cards. So once we were confirmed that we knew that there were some spirits present that we called on, we had Jordan get on the spirit box. So what Jordan has is like a spirit box. It's like a little radio transmitter, And that's literally what it is. And it's got like an antenna, and it runs through radio stations. Kind of like if you hit the seek button on your stereo and you can hear it like running through. The point of it is spirits can take those words and put them together and like kind of spit them out through these frequencies, and then you can make sense of them if you listen really well. It does take some practice because it can be very overwhelming. Jordan is very well practiced at this. He's been doing this for like a couple of years. But what he does is he puts his headphones in and then he puts like noise cancelers over his ears. And the reason that he does this is because he doesn't want to hear what we're saying. Because if he can hear our questions, then pareidolia, you can interpret whatever you want as your answer. So if he cannot hear what we're saying, but what he's saying is lining up with what we're saying, then that's where you start to get those results that feel a little bit more believable and aren't just like, oh, well, anybody could say that that little quick sound was a yes, you know, that's what you're looking for. So Jordan started his spirit box, and Sydney took care of him during that, which I was really grateful for, because my job was to keep everybody on track, keep questions going, pull cards as we were asking these questions, and also concentrate on protecting and holding sacred space in the circle to make sure that nothing got through to attach itself to any of us or mess with any of us or trip us up. So we did that, and we spent about, I want to say maybe 25 minutes or 20-ish minutes total actually asking questions, maybe a little bit less time because we only had 45 minutes. Like if we could have stayed and prolonged our session, but we couldn't leave Jasmine down in the basement that long, because that's a long time to leave somebody alone down there, and also a long time for her and us to have to put all that energy out there to protect and deflect these very powerful and strong entities, because like the energy in there is very strong. So at the end of the seance, we closed everything out, we evoked, we closed the circle, and then we very quickly went downstairs to get Jasmine. And well, the person who was kind of the middle person went down to get Jasmine, and then we debriefed after that and kind of compared notes. And you can watch some content on Patreon to see how our notes kind of lined up. And it's really interesting because a lot of the things that happened and were being said during the seance coincided with things that were happening in the basement. And you have to remember, like, this house is 4 levels. There's the basement, the main level, the second level, and the attic. And we were in the attic and Jasmine was down in the basement. So there was no way that Jasmine could have known what we were saying, what we were doing, what was happening, because you can't hear, especially with that many layers of house between each other. So that was really interesting. So the Three Kings was really interesting because at first the way that Jasmine presented it to me is it sounded like, oh, kind of a fun game. Like, we're going to go down there. One of us is going to sit down there for 45 minutes and see what comes up in the mirror. So like the idea is you sit in a chair with your feet in some water. There's a mirror in front of you and then 2 off to the side, kind of like Jasmine calls it the medicine cabinet effect. You have a candle right in front of that front mirror. You're gazing into the front mirror, but you kind of start to see things in the periphery mirrors. And the idea is to get entities, spirits, whatever you want to call them, but in this case it's entities, to come into those mirrors, and one is telling you the truth and one is telling you lies. And so that's kind of what I thought it was at first. But then as we sort of started to pull cards and we started to talk and we decided to do the seance, and the cards said it would be a good idea to do the seance, Jasmine said, well, the Three Kings is going to be important because while you're doing the seance up there, you're trying to talk to people who were once living, spirits, right? And while you're doing that, I need to occupy the entities. So the entities being the energies that live there that were never human. And I'm not saying like, oh, a lot of people will say, oh, Whispers is demonic. Like, I'm not saying it's necessarily that. I'm saying like for years, like decades, hundreds of years, even if you look at the history, people come into that house expecting to be scared and looking for scary stories, and they'll tell scary stories, and rumors are circulated in that small town and beyond about this house. So that lends its energy to this place that feeds off of that fear. So that's kind of what I perceive the entities to be, are these things that have been built and fed by human thoughts and human feelings and human emotions, and they take on their own kind of life. And they are powerful. From the seance, like, we can kind of see that they control these spirits that are the dead people that live there. But the purpose of the Three Kings was to keep them occupied so that we could talk up here to the people that lived in the house, that died in the house, that are what make the house, right? So the list of entities, or the list of spirits, really are, like Dr. John and his wife and his daughter, and then other families and other people that have passed away there. So that was the point of the exercise. And there's so much energy in there that you can't really expect that Jasmine could necessarily hold every single thing down there. Definitely some malicious sounding things came through, especially on the spirit box. But I did not feel scared or threatened when I was doing the seance, which was a new feeling for me, because every time I had been in that house before, I did feel scared. Like, I was on edge the whole time. The previous 4 or 5 times I had been there. But this time it wasn't really like that, and I was a lot more confident, and I felt a lot more at peace that we were going to get to talk to some people. And we did talk to some people, but some things still did slip through, because that can just be expected in a house like that. The whole time we were doing the seance, I was thinking, I hope that Jasmine's okay. I hope, because that house is dangerous. I have been there when people have been bitten, they've been scratched, they've been pushed, they've been, people have whispered, things have whispered in people's ears. My own husband had that happen to him. So it can be kind of dangerous there, and it's dark, and you're alone down there. You don't know what could be down there. So I wasn't worried about her. But to a certain point, you just have to trust that each person is going to do their part and do their best. And we had a middleman or a middle woman or a middle person hanging out on the main floor, Kat. Their job was to be the go-between between us and Jasmine, and also to be able to pull Jasmine out of the Three Kings, because you have to think about it. You're walking down into a dark basement in a very old house with very creaky, uneven steps, and into a basement that is full of energies and entities that are messing with Jasmine. So that's a scary job, and Kat did a really nice job of just being okay, I'm cool with it. I will do it. And Kat also tried to tell us hey, you have 15 minutes left, but we had to close the upper door because of the air conditioning in the house, because it's old. So we didn't hear them, but we had a timekeeper during the seance. Nick helped keep us time, so kept us on task. But yeah, the Three Kings thing was really interesting, because I had never done something with that much intention to keep the bad away so that we could talk to the people that live there. And I feel like that kind of helped our spirit box session be a lot clearer as far as getting answers. But overall, honestly, I don't feel like we learned anything from the seance that I didn't already know and hadn't already heard. But it was interesting because we could more easily pinpoint who each person was that was coming through. Whereas before, I was never really able to do that. We weren't really sure. And I think it's because the entities that live in the house were interfering. And still, even though they kind of did during the seance, they really didn't as much. So we got to hear from the kids. We got clear answers from, is this who I think it is? The cards were telling us. And then the spirit box would confirm, yes, I'm here. And I thought that was really cool to get 2 things lining up to confirm that answer as a yes. And it was just a really cool experience after we did the seance and the Three Kings at the same time. That was a really cool part. When it was time to close the seance, we were keeping an eye on the time, and I wanted to err on the side of caution. So we had 8 minutes. We closed the seance. So we thank the spirits for talking to us, even if some of the things they were saying or what was coming through wasn't always nice. There were some mean things that were said, for sure. But we still thanked them because you should always be respectful, right? You're in somebody's house. And we evoked, which I have the chant like on paper so that we could easily evoke and invoke quickly. So we evoked, and then we closed the circle. And as we were evoking and closing the circle, Sydney and another member of our group were like packing everything up as we were doing it. And I was like, awesome, like trying to save some time because they knew that we had to rush downstairs. So we put out all the candles. We kind of left everything there. We're like, we'll come back up and get it later. We need to go downstairs now. I was one of the last people to leave just because I wanted to make sure that everything was closed down and like everybody was good. And I also, in that house, you can get pushed down the stairs. And I thought, like, if anyone's going to get pushed, it's going to be me or Sydney, because we were the ones that were doing all of the chanting and the astral work. So Sydney and I were the last down, but everyone else kind of went ahead of us and had to go quickly. We had to go down 2 flights of stairs to get to the main level. And as soon as we started coming down, I think as soon as Kat heard us come down, they were like, okay, I'm going to get Jasmine. So Kat ran down there to get Jasmine. And by the time I got down to the main floor, I could hear Kat downstairs talking to Jasmine, and I could hear them laughing. And Sydney said, oh, they're laughing and joking around, so everything must be okay. And I was like, okay, good. Like, I was relieved because I was seriously afraid that, like, I would come down and, like, Jasmine would be, like, passed out or, like, be on the ground or, like, will have gotten scratched or, like, was all bloody. Like, I was legitimately afraid of that because, like I said, nothing like this, as far as I know, had ever really been done on this level before at this house. And I had no idea how the entities would react to that. So I was relieved that Jasmine was mostly okay. And when we were debriefing, I listened to the audio for the 3 Kings, and it was wild. Like, lots of growling, lots of disembodied voices, like just really crazy things that I had heard stories about at that house, but I had never really heard it for myself while I was there. And that was wild. So it was really eye-opening to see how using the craft in a space like that could bring that out, because I don't think these entities were used to that at all. And I think they were very defensive because of it and very threatened because of it in a lot of ways. But it was really a whole different side of it that I'd never seen before. So during the seance, the spirits maybe might feel more comfortable talking to me because I'd been there multiple times. Like, out of everybody there, I'd been there the most. Jordan had been there 2 other times. Nick had been there 1 other time. But everybody else, like, I had been there the most. So the spirits kept talking to me and saying, like, Paige, get her out. Stop her. What are you doing? Stop it. At one point, the spirit box was like, the girl's trying hard. And I think they were talking about Jasmine. And I almost kind of got the feeling, and I don't know why I think this, but I kind of got the feeling that the spirits were nervous, not because they didn't like us, but because they were nervous of what the entities were going to do to them in retaliation to what we were doing. Because I very much feel like entities control that place. Like, they run that place. There's so many of them and there's so much going on there. I very much feel that the spirits can't come through as well as they might want to or how they want to, because the entities kind of call the shots. So I almost think that they were nervous about it. And maybe there were some spirits that were like, witches, like, we don't approve, you know. And they did say that a little bit on the spirit box, like, witch, get out. And they said, like, some really dirty, non-YouTube friendly things that I think Sydney kind of talked about in her video. But I don't know if it was all spirits. I kind of get the impression that a lot of it was entities that might retaliate against the spirits. And maybe that's why they were nervous and why they were scared and they wanted Jasmine to stop. Because I don't think they wanted us necessarily to stop, but I definitely think they wanted Jasmine to stop. And they did tell us to leave several times. So, but every time I've gone to that house, we've gotten that message in one way or another. Like, even before we even ever did the spirit box in that house, we would do the flashlight experiment where we'd like put a little flashlight and we'd ask, do you want us to leave? Turn the light on. It would turn the light on, you know. you want us to leave, turn the light off, it would turn it off. Like, we've always gotten that message of get out. We don't want you here. And I don't know if that's spirits or entities. It could be both. I was mostly just like amazed by the results that we got from the Midnight Man and how those things lined up with what we were doing. Mostly amazed by the results we got when we did the Three Kings, because I had never heard those sounds before. And to hear like the growls and to hear like we heard footsteps coming down the basement and no one was coming down the basement. Like, Kat was upstairs. We were 2 floors up. Jasmine was down there by herself. So who was coming down the basement? At one point, like, you can hear splashing, and I'm pretty sure that Jasmine was still most of the time. So who knows where that came from. And the whispering that we heard was odd because at the very end, Kat's down there getting Jasmine out, and they're kind of talking, and you can hear 4 voices whisper 4 different things. And you can't quite make it out. Like, one of them says, like, I'm sorry. One of them says, her time is up, or our time is up, or something like that. And then I don't know what the other 2 were saying. But that's unmistakably not, it couldn't be anyone else. Like, it wasn't Jasmine. It wasn't Kat. It wasn't us. And then when Jasmine and Kat came up, I was like shocked to see that Jasmine was smiling and like, okay. I was like, okay, you lasted that long. Like, I couldn't have lasted that long because it's just such a weird energy down there. I don't know. It's just so heavy. But the debriefing was cool because we got to hear all the different pieces kind of fall together and see how they coincided, and they lined up like really well. We were done with the seance. We had like kind of a long break because we needed to eat, we needed to drink, we needed to debrief, we needed to kind of ground ourselves after doing all this heavy energy work. So I went out to my car and I was joking. Like, I was totally joking. I was like, does anybody else need anything for my car? Because like, I don't want to keep going out here. I don't want ghosts to like get me, you know? Totally joking, right? And so I went out by myself, and I think this was the only time I went out to the car by myself, because before, like, someone else had either needed to go outside or my husband went with me or whatever, because it's dark out there. You know, there aren't really that many street lights. It's a small town. It's like, you know, 2 a.m, like nobody's up, you know. So I take like my little flashlight, shine it where I'm walking, and the house is a big old house. So it's got a huge front porch. It's got like a bench on one side of the door. The other side of the door, there's like a swing, a couple rocking chairs. And on the very end of the porch, there's one rocking chair. And my uncle had caught images of what looks like something sitting in that rocking chair before, which I thought was interesting. So I'm going around in my car to pop the trunk, and I kind of glance up at the porch, just like you do, you know. And I see something that's like all white with like not really any eyes, but like a big creepy smile, like sitting in the rocking chair. But it's like a split second. Like, you know how like you'll look at something and then you're like kind of do a double take, like what? Like, I saw it for a split second and I was like, okay. Like, I had this really like dread feeling, and I was like, I'm gonna get, you know, what I need to get out of here. It was like some drinks. I'm gonna get these drinks out of the car. I'm gonna bolt back in. And I was like really nervous because like I don't want to look again and see like what's over there, and I don't want to walk by it, but I gotta go inside the door. Like, I need to hurry. So I quickly just scooped that up, slammed my door, and like walked around my car, and I looked up again one more time because you can't, and it's still freaking sitting there. And I'm like, oh my God. And it's not like a corporeal necessarily thing, but it's like, it kind of is like a face in the mist, if that makes sense. Like I would give it like the same consistency almost as like shower mist or something, but like it was fully formed, like sitting on that rocking chair, like smiling at me and like looking right at me. And I was like, oh God. So I booked it inside, and right before, as I was walking by, I looked again and it was gone. And like I ran inside and I was like, guys, like, I don't know if I'm just imagining this or if like this is playing tricks on me or whatever, but I think I saw something on the front porch, and I'm pretty spooked about it, like, because I had never seen things like that at that house. Like, I've felt things, like heard things, like heard footsteps and, you know, things like that, but I've never seen anything like that. So that really freaked me out. I was a little shaken up for a few minutes, but I eventually calmed down, and then we did the Midnight Man, which was kind of a fun little game, and it was a nice way to tie up the end of the night, because I don't really feel like much happened during the Midnight Man as far as like paranormal things, but it was cool to go around to the house, to each room, and I kind of treated it as like saying goodbye and like saying goodnight to the house, like kind of thanking each spirit for letting us be there, and well, I mean, for, you know, being there with us, I guess. And Jordan and I just kind of went, because we were partners, we went to each room, and we, you know, he held the candle and I held the salt. We were tied together. And we just went through and just kind of looked around, and the idea is you're supposed to close windows and doors, because, you know, you open them all to let this malicious male spirit in, and then you walk all around the house and close the windows and doors to kind of trick him and, you know, make him feel like you're the boss, not him, right? And I thought it would be cool to do in this house, because there are rumors that Dr. John was, you know, an abuser, an assault person, you know, someone who has done bad things to women. That's a rumor. I don't know if it's true or not, but that's kind of always been the story. So we couldn't open the windows because it's an old house, right? The windows are kind of stuck shut. But we did open the front door, and then we closed it, and then we went to each room, and that was kind of neat to just say goodbye to the house. And like, I didn't really feel any negativity while we were doing that, honestly, and maybe it was because I was really tired, but it was like 3 a.m. when we were doing that, 3 to 3:30. But it was cool to just see every room one more time and like kind of say goodnight to everything and just kind of close out the evening. And then after that, we promptly left because our time was up, and we drove home and kind of debriefed as we drove home, because it was like an 1.5-hour drive. If you're gonna go to Whispers, definitely make sure that you take lots of food to eat. Definitely take lots of breaks, because it can be intense. We kind of make our home base the dining room every time we go, and that seems to work. Definitely go on the tour. My uncle is really good at giving the tour, and he knows a lot about the house. So if you have questions, bring those. He will be able to answer them, and if he can't answer them, he will tell you honestly. He is doing a lot of work to verify rumors or to dispel rumors. He's like got a historian that's working with him, and a geologist, and all kinds of cool stuff. And you know, just go in there and be respectful. Like, my uncle will tell you you're in the house for the night, and if you want to provoke. He does not advise provoking in the basement, but he says do what you must. I really think that provoking is disrespectful, and just always remember that you're in someone else's house, and there are many, many people that still live there, and that's their home, and that's their space. Especially the children that have died there are kind of protective of their rooms and their space. So just be knowledgeable of that, and, you know, just be open. Don't go there expecting like, oh, nothing's gonna happen, this is BS. Because if that's the way that you feel, then that's what you're gonna get. But if you're open to experiencing something new and something cool, and just kind of being in a very liminal space, like a place where people have passed and many people have lived, in like a place full of history, then that's going to be a good place for you to go. So I highly recommend it. I think everyone should be open to an experience like that at least once in their life. I think it's good for you to connect on a spiritual level with people that aren't with you anymore. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope that if you go to the Whispers Estate that you have a good time, and I appreciate you watching. Bye.